All right. Hello and welcome to the Accredited Investors Only podcast presented by Accredited Life. I am your host, Peter Neal. Man, it's 2025. Welcome to a new year. It's great to be with you. And I hope so far that it's treating you very well. We have a very exciting show planned today with a great interview lined up. And before we get into that, though, I think in the beginning of the year, this is a great time. 2025 hopefully will be a great time for you to start to live your accredited life, something we talk about on this podcast all the time. And I have presented in past podcasts and on the accreditedlife.com website and all. We've gotten into the stages of living your accredited life. And if you remember, the first stage is kind of it's all about your foundation and, taking time to really examine who you are, why you are that way, all the experiences you've had growing up, throughout your career, throughout your life, the person that, the experiences you've had, the person that you've been, the person that you are, all that kind of stuff. So I think in a new year, I don't know about how you feel about resolutions and things like that. I'm not a massive fan, because you do it for a day, a week, a couple weeks, a month maybe, and then they always seem to fizzle out, right, to some degree. And maybe some of us are stronger, than others, and we can, really get something to set in. But I think this time of year, more so than setting resolutions and things like that, it's a really good time to reflect. And, that's where I think reflecting and building your foundation and this is a great time to be doing it. This is what I love to do in the beginning of the year, looking back at the previous year, what worked, what didn't work, what did you learn, what did you wish you did more of, what are you happy that you did a lot of, or what did you achieve, what success did you have, all that kind of stuff. Now is a great time to be going through all that. And it's a great time to be, reaching out to people maybe that you haven't connected with for a long time, reconnecting, finding out how they're doing, how they've been, what they're working on, all that stuff. It's a good time to be reading and researching and, kind of planning your year and all that kind of stuff. So I would challenge you maybe take this time, take January and the next few weeks to really start to examine how 2024 went. And how you'd like this year to go. Maybe we talked about this before in past episodes, and maybe allow you to do this in your own life. But maybe put yourself at the end of this year and say, here's all the things I would like to look back and say I achieved during this year, and start to plan that out. And next week we're going to talk about some kind of bringing that stuff into reality. So I think now is a great time to be working on your foundation and then also your vision, so while you're looking at how the last year went, just examining your life as a whole, I think it's also, take some time to start to plan where you want to be, where you want to go, all that kind of stuff, and your goals and your kind of your vision for 2025. And then next week, we're going to talk about that and kind of bring it into reality. We have a great interview lined up with somebody who is really living what I would call their accredited life and doing the things that they want to be doing and having a really fun time doing it. But for now, we have a really great episode lined up. From a real estate perspective, multifamily has been something, obviously, passive investors love multifamily for various reasons in the last couple years with interest rates and supply and demand and things like that. There's been challenges, let's say, in the space and all. Chances are that, right, if you're investing in it and all. So we have somebody today who invests in a lot of multifamily. They kind of have a very niche kind of strategy in the space with smaller and mid-sized multifamily, and they've had a ton of experience in the single-family space and the multifamily space with revitalizing existing product and that kind of thing. So really happy to have on Ed Mathews. He is the founder, and he runs he runs Clark Street Capital, and they are dedicated to helping passive investors, C-level executives invest passively in real estate. So without further ado, let's get right into my interview with Ed Mathews.
You're listening to the Accredited Investors Only podcast, presented by Accredited Life.
Ed, welcome to the show. How you feeling today?
Good, Peter. Nice to see you. How are you?
Oh, I am doing very well. So,
Good.
I would just learned before in the kind of pre-show talk there that you went to Villanova, so you're not too far from me. What brought you to Villanova? It's a great school.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I both went there, and we joke that there's no way in hell either of us would get in there now, right? But hey, 30 years ago or some odd years ago, we were fortunate enough to go there, and it's one of my favorite places on earth. And whenever I can get back, we get back. You know, it's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
Some of my closest friends are Villanovans, so I'm lucky.
Great network. I'm a Temple guy myself, but my brother was at Villanova. So like just the worlds were so different. I would hang out with my brother at Nova. Unbelievably beautiful, suburban campus, just a lot of green, open space. And then I would go back to Temple, which was, more of an beautiful campus and just an urban perspective. You know what I mean? And to your point before, both schools have just evolved so much over the last couple of years. It's amazing.
Yeah, so my daughter's a senior at Temple right now. So, and it's funny. I didn't know that Temple was a state school until my daughter got interested in it, and so she applied to Villanova and applied to Temple and a couple of others, and she did not get into where she got waitlisted at Villanova, and then fell in love with Temple. And my wife and I were like, oh my God, thank God, because tuition at Temple is a way more reasonable than it is at Nova. So,
Oh yeah, I think my parents were happy with me for that, and I at that time I thought I was going to be in like TV and radio, and they have an amazing communication school. Is that what you say are?
no, she's a criminal justice major, but
Okay. Very nice. I actually, as an elective, I took one or two criminal justice courses, and I had some really great professors. And I could, one of those classes, I could still remember today some of the things that he said that it's stuck with me all these years later. So that's awesome. So you got a lot of Philadelphia connections, and hey, where are you at now? Live in Connecticut, right?
Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Connecticut, and then Philly and New Jersey for about 7 or 8 years after school, and then Boston. And then when we started having the kids, we moved back home to Connecticut. My wife and I are both from here.
Gotcha. So you are an East Coast guy.
I'm an East Coast guy.
You've been all over the place.
Yeah.
So tell the audience, Ed, what it is that you do, a little bit maybe about your background and
Sure.
from a work perspective, and then what you do today.
Yeah, so I am a recovering Silicon Valley marketing and sales executive. So I lived here on the East Coast, but I flew to the West Coast and pretty much everywhere else, slinging software and consulting services for about 24 years.
Wow.
And working for companies that probably your audience has not heard of a lot of them, but a couple of them were Ariba and now SAP. Coop. My last company I was with DocuSign, and the great time. Wouldn't change it for the world. Met some amazing people, learned some amazing things, but traveling 150 plus nights a year, for 20 some odd years, got old, especially as my kids started to get older. I was missing a lot of good stuff. And so in parallel to that, I had started investing in real estate back in 2011. And, over a course of about 6 or 7 years, the portfolio of multifamilies and flips along the way, got to the point where it surpassed my W-2 income. And then, it was funny. I was standing in a conference center with Keith Kroc, who is one of the great entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley, and he was the chairman and CEO of DocuSign at the time.
Okay.
Actually,
The name sounds really familiar.
he was doing what I affectionately refer to as his laser light show, which means he is the most charismatic person you're ever going to meet in your entire life, and he's intelligent, high integrity, just super smart. And if you can't tell, I think a lot of them. And he was doing his laser light show in front of me and 2,000 of my colleagues. And I was standing there, with my team, and I'm like, yep, he's right. Absolutely. But I just can't do this anymore. And I ended up resigning, a few weeks later, and that was 2000. The speech that I saw was in December of 2017, and I resigned January 2nd of 18 and started, full time on Clark Street Capital, which is my company now, in February of 2018, and have been flipping houses and ultimately buying, small, medium, and now large multifamilies throughout the Northeast.
Wow, that's amazing. So when was the first time you think that seed was planted that you wanted to do something different, and you maybe grew to love real estate along the way? How long would you say it was before that seed was planted to when you harvested there?
All my life. So, my dad and my uncle were both entrepreneurs. I had always thought that I wanted to build houses. I worked for general contractors when I was in high school, when I wasn't, playing baseball or basketball or going to school. And so I had always had an affinity towards real estate. But then, I went to school and life took over, and I had college loans to pay for, and, a girlfriend, then fiance, then wife to at least split the bills with. And we, I never really got away from it, but I knew that it was in my future. And then I had a consulting firm after the dot-com crash for about 4 years. I was, shot out of a cannon every Monday morning, couldn't wait to go to work, fired up. And then, about 4 years in, I decided to sell out to my partners, which we did. And I went back to work for the man, so to speak. And then in 2008, a really good friend of mine gave me a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, okay.
And I poured through it in like 3 hours and just devoured it. And thought, okay, this is the path I want to go. I want to be an investor. And so real estate became obvious, the obvious choice, given the basic tenets of the book, as well as the fact that I'd always kind of been in love with real estate and been fascinated by it. But it took me 3 years to kind of ratchet up the courage to start.
Wow.
And, I'm one of those, I think like, I'm a marketing guy, but I tend to think like an engineer. I like to consume as much information as possible. Sure. And that's a good thing. And sometimes to my detriment, because I'm also prone to over analysis. So it took me 3 years to kind of ratchet up the courage. And in 2011, I finally bought my first 4-family on Clark Street, which is why I named the company that.
Wow.
And, it's been
an homage to your to the first deal that led to many more, right?
Always remember where you came from, right?
That's amazing. I love that. Now, was that the 4-family? Was it because of a FHA loan, or did it just kind of happen that low?
So funny story there. So I met this realtor, now broker, Amy Rio, and she was in Glastonbury, Connecticut, and she had just recently started her brokerage, and she had like 3 or 4 brokers running around, and she was kind enough to show me through 20 plus properties, and this was 08, 09, 2010, right? Or really 2010 into 2011. She probably showed me about 20 different properties, and I always found a reason to say no. And finally we came across this 4-family that was in mid rehab. The person had run out of money and just left the keys on the counter and handed it back to the bank. And we were out in the parking lot, and I started with here are the 19 reasons why I'm not going to buy this building. And she listened very patiently. And as I'm talking, I see her pull out a piece of paper and a pen. And she, finally said, okay, Ed, stop. She said, look, I've shown you, a couple of dozen properties, and you found a reason not to buy all of them. This is by far the best deal I've shown you. And it was a $99,000 4-family in East Hartford, which is a really good working class town. She goes, if you don't buy this, I'm going to. And now Amy is, if she's 5'2", that's generous, right? And I'm 6'4", not a small guy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I'm like literally more than a foot taller than her. And she scared the hell out of me.
I was going to say, it sounds intimidating.
Yeah, she clicked the pen and handed it to me. She goes, now take this effing pen. And she didn't say effing. and sign this effing contract or never call me again. And I went, okay, and took the pen and signed the contract. And I owned that property up until about 6 months ago where I sold it. So,
Oh my God.
and we've been trading up properties ever since. So it's, yeah. So yeah, a little tiny woman, a little tiny broker, got me off the dime, and I'm so glad she did. And now she's probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest brokers in Connecticut. And
Wow.
so happy for her. And she even deigns to return my call every once in a while, which is
Well, sometimes you need that swift kick in the ass, and after 20 something properties, you need it. And that's unbelievable. So you mentioned a term that you hear a lot that might be good for the audience to get a better understanding of, but you said trading up in properties. Talk to me about that.
so last probably 12, 13 years, we've been buying up small to mid-sized multifamilies. And by that, I mean anywhere from 4-family, which is the smallest one we owned. Most of them were 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 unit buildings.
Okay.
And so we acquired, I think at the top, we were just short of 200, probably like 195, 196 units.
Wow. Great.
And so, yeah, so good and not so good, right? So the good part is, the cash flow was great. We bought them really well. We fixed them up, made them, our process is we buy kind of crappy apartment buildings from landlords who kind of suck at their jobs. And, we go in, we repair the relationships that we can with the residents. We make the properties clean and safe, and then we upgrade them and make them beautiful. Because, from my perspective, I think the play here is to create a relationship both from an environment where people can be proud to live and also at a human level, so that they stay a long time, because vacancy is, one of those really expensive hidden costs that a lot of, property owners don't really understand until they're in it.
Sure.
Pardon me. And so the whole process was we acquired all these properties, and then over the course of the last probably 2 or 3, almost 3 years now, we've been selling those off with the intent of buying much larger properties. And so, I'm one of those people that right now I've got, a whole bunch of money on the sidelines waiting for cap rates and valuations and interest rates to come back into, a place where a lot of these deals start to pencil out again. I think we're getting pretty darn close. Certainly finding deals. And so we've been trading up by selling the 4s, 5s, 6s, 8s, 10s, 12s, 15s. And now we're hunting for, 50 units above, both here in the Northeast as well as in the Carolinas.
Now, was that portfolio mostly in your backyard there, or did you? Okay, all in Connecticut, or
all in New England. So we own, actually, I'm meeting my former partner for lunch in about 2 hours. We owned 55 units in the Rutland, Vermont area for a bunch of years. Bought them really well, and then in 21 and 22 we sold them all off, kind of into that upswing in the market. And then we also owned, like I said, probably 140 some odd units here in Connecticut.
Okay.
Were acquired over the course of 10, 12 years.
And were you using your own cash for all of these, or were you bringing investors in, or?
Yeah, so it's interesting. One of the things that I'd love to have back as far as decisions I made was for the first like 7, 8 years, I was nine years, I was using my own capital, right? I would, in my day job, I'd get a bonus check or a commission or something, and I'd take that and it's a down payment, and I'd either use it to go flip something and build more capital and buy a building, or I'd straight up buy a multifamily. And, I did that rinse and repeat for, probably 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
Then started to raise money. The people around me started to get curious, right? Friends, family. And so, I'll talk with anybody about real estate. From the guy standing in front of me at the coffee shop, or, over Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, right? And so, my college roommates, some family members, they started to get interested, and we created these deals where they could make a good return on their money, either as a loan, a joint venture, and in one case, a couple cases, syndications. Um, and then over the course of time, their friends got interested and their friends got interested. And, so we started to build larger deals. And so that's when we got into more joint ventures and a handful of syndicates.
Gotcha. Interesting. So what, everything was self-managed, or were you working with a management company, or?
So early on, we worked with management companies because I was traveling. I couldn't
Sure.
be here. So we did that, and that worked well. We brought management in-house right after COVID, really, and that has worked great as well. The fact is that I think that one of the most important and commonly overlooked um, things about this business is the relationship with the resident, right?
Mm.
A lot of building owners will say, well, don't treat them like customers. Well, that's exactly what they are, right?
Mm.
If they stop spending money, they don't pay rent and or move, and both of those things are bad. So, if we get a phone call, we, send our team out and we go fix whatever needs to be fixed. And, we've got a dedicated team. I use virtual assistants in the Philippines to do the kind of the frontline support. And so we use technology, being a former techie geek, right? We use technology and process to do a good job for managing our residents.
Yeah, I love to hear that, because I think people speak so much about relationships in this business, and I always look at real estate from a capital acquisitions and execution, kind of those three main pillars. And the execution part of it, your tenants are definitely a part of that. You know what I mean? To your point, if you have high vacancy, and you hear these stories where people go in, with a 90%, occupied building, and a couple years later it's 70%. And we've looked at a few of those buildings over the years where it's just like, oh my God, you hear these stories, and they just, for whatever reason, they just didn't do right by the tenants, and that's a huge problem.
It is. And those are the buildings when I say that we buy from landlords who suck at their jobs, those are the people we buy them from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's an opportunity there, right?
It's a lot harder than it looks, right? And you're dealing with human beings for one thing. And so they're not all the same. The same answer that worked for Bob isn't going to work for Betty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's different demands based on the expectations of the residents. So you've got to operationalize that so that they understand, okay, here's your part of the relationship. Here's my part of the relationship.
Yeah.
And it's a business relationship. I'm friendly, but I'm not friends with these people. Right.
Sure.
We serve them, and we serve them so that they're proud of their home and they stay there, hopefully a really long time. And we take good care of them and when something happens, we, do our best to fix it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think some people, especially like people like that you're talking about on the seller side, when you're dealing with an owner in the early days, and some of them might have really good, friendships with their tenants, and that's where you tend to see opportunity in the sense that, their leases can be way undervalued, and God bless them, if they were at a point in their life where that's what they wanted to do. God bless them, but when you have investors in the mix, you have to do right by them as well, so to your point, you really need to balance being a professional landlord, doing things the right way. And then I love the mindset of, you're serving these people. I mean, they're a customer, and just like if a customer came into your store, you want to give them the best possible experience. If they have a question, you want to get it answered. If they have an issue or something, you want to address it. So I think that's a great mindset.
But sometimes the answer is no, right?
Sure.
It's just, because we have a business to run, and I'm very upfront about that. And so is my team. And, if there is a budget for every property, and we have to manage that budget. And so, there's a process we go through to, some of these buildings are 120, 130 years old, right? So stuff breaks.
Yeah.
And, it's part of it. But the fact is that, the goal of when we acquire a property, we go in and make it clean and safe. We're trying to identify and fix proactively as many of those, like mechanical problems, right? Plumbing, electrical, heating, whatever. We're trying to get all of those off the table as quickly as possible so that, when folks move in to their, brand new and when I talk about making it beautiful, I'm talking about, brand new kitchens, brand new bathrooms, brand new flooring, brand new lighting, basically a new place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're setting an expectation that's pretty high in terms of the living conditions and the service that they should expect. But we're also charging for it as well, right? So
Yeah.
it's an expectations game that we play, but it's it's like I said, these are the folks' homes, and so we treat them like that.
Yeah. What I feel like too with small apartments, you need to be somewhat of a therapist. How much time do you spend with people complaining about other neighbors and things like that? I feel like the tenant. No, really.
I try really hard to stay out of people's lives. If there is
Usually they're the ones trying to bring you into it. Especially if they're having an issue with the next door neighbor. Somebody's loud, somebody's leaving stuff in the hallway, that kind of stuff.
So we're on that stuff like white on rice, right? Because everyone has the expectation to quiet enjoyment of their house, right? And that's literally verbatim what is in their lease, right? So if you're throwing parties on Saturday night or you're leaving stuff out in the hallway, that is no good, right?
Yeah.
And so
Parking in somebody else's spot,
managing all,
not taking trash out, all those things are.
but it's not me knocking on the door. It's a member of my team sending a notice and then sending another notice and then following up with a phone call to make sure everybody's clear on, what the policies are.
Mhm.
And, we also have, as part of the new resident orientation, we have a document that it's a 20-something page document that we hand them that is, here is our relationship, right? Our relationship is to provide a clean and safe place where you can be proud to live, and we're going to serve you well. And when you have a problem, you either log on here or call here, and, we'll be out, we'll set expectations as to exactly when we'll be out. And then we show up when we say we're going to show up, right? Your relationship with us is you pay your rent on time, and that's it. And so, and you be respectful of the people around you, because it's you live in an 80-year-old building, and if you're bouncing a basketball on the second floor,
the walls
on the first floor are gonna hear it, right? And so, or if you're throwing a party or practicing your drums or whatever,
when you're lifting weights at 1 o'clock in the morning and dropping them on the floor because you're
that's fine. Just do it in the afternoon. That's all I'm at, right? And so, there's that, and that's the human factor, right? That we have to. But I find that a lot of folks that burn out on the management piece, they get involved in the personal stuff.
Oh my God, sure.
And they take it personally, and again, it's a business, right? I have empathy. I have a deep well of empathy. If we had an incident recently where there was a without getting into too much detail, is a spousal abuse issue, and the woman in the relationship reached out to us for help, and we were on it immediately and got her help. And fortunately, here in Connecticut, the state has a ton of resources, and so does the city she lives in. And so we were able to connect her with all that information and get her in touch with the right people like that afternoon. And she's still a great resident, and I'm happy that we were able to help her. But there's a difference between helping somebody access services and how I'd react if that same person was my wife or daughter, right?
Sure. Oh my God, sure, definitely. Yeah, that's some really good insight. Because I do think, depending on your personality, some people can maybe take things too personally or something like that, and you have to look at it from that. It's a business perspective, and let things kind of roll off your back at the end of the day. And
I don't let it roll. I mean, I felt for her, but I was
and that's all.
I was staring at her ceiling, all night, hoping she was okay, and
sure.
now she's okay, so that's good, right?
Yeah, definitely. You have to know the different levels of what it is that you're dealing with, because something like that compared to somebody parking in a parking space are on two different stories, but they're both important.
They need apples and dump trucks, right? Right, apples and dump trucks. But in comparison, but yeah, I mean, it's we can help without being involved, right?
Yeah,
we can.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So talk to me about your buy box. Do you have an ideal kind of deal that you're looking for, or talk to me about that. And it seems like it's evolved over the years.
Yes.
Why making the shift from the smaller, 4 to 15, 20 doors now to the 50? And so what was leading to that? And then talk to me a little bit about the buy box, what you're looking for.
Yeah. So, at the height, we probably owned, I don't know, 14, 15 different buildings across the state, and maybe more. No, it's probably a dozen to 15 buildings. I don't remember the exact number. And, we were herding cats, right? So
Mm.
a leak in Unit 2 at 30 Anthony Street, and in Griswold, Connecticut, which is up in the northeast corner, and a broken step in West Haven, which is in the southern part of the state. And if we're running around, fixing stuff, that's fine, but we're running around, and it's a lot of management, right? And so part of it was I just wanted to stop herding cats. I wanted to stop spreading my team so thin that they were everywhere in the state. Fortunately, it's a small state, but it takes 90 minutes to 2 hours to drive from one end to the other. So
Wow.
it's a lot. It's not California, but
Yeah, sure.
it's reachable. But if you get two calls that are both urgent, and you gotta send people to them, that's a management problem, right? And so I wanted to stop herding cats and consolidate the units into one building as opposed to many buildings all over the place. That was part of it. So to create, a little bit more operational efficiency. The other part of it is we want to, I see an opportunity in, now that we've gotten through this inflationary period and everything is starting to rationalize back to traditional norms, in terms of rates, in terms of valuations and whatnot. I wanted to grow again, right? Our goal is to get to 500 units in the next probably 18 months to 2 years, and 1,000 units within the next 5 years. And in order to do that, I can buy 10 buildings or I can buy 35 or 40 buildings. That's a lot easier to buy 10 buildings. So that's what we're going to do.
Gotcha. So what what's the process look like? So it sounds like you're looking now, you're working with brokers, you have in-house acquisitions, and then when you do find a deal, what do you do? Just kind of walk us through, a day in the life of Ed.
So two paths. You were talking about a buy box, right?
Yep.
Kind of two areas. One, we're buying land and we're building affordable housing here in Connecticut.
Great.
Got a project right now. We're in the process of getting entitled. It'll ultimately be probably about 100 units, 96 to 106 units, depending on the design we go with. And so that will be a property, properties here in central Connecticut. So the development projects we're keeping close to home. So that because I'm going to be on site, pretty much every day, me and my partner, Mike. In terms of the existing, we're looking for Class C, Class B, ideally, on the Class B side, 1980 or better, pitched roofs, separated utilities, minimum 50 units. On the Class C side, I don't really care when it was built. I care more about the neighborhood. And again, 50 units or above, separated units or utilities, and pitched roofs. Again, I'm not a big fan of flat roofs. Having been, I'm a general contractor now. I've fixed my unfair share of flat roofs. I don't want to do that anymore. So
Stories there, yeah.
right. So that's basically what we're looking for. So we're building relationships in the Carolinas with brokers who deal in that 50 to 150 unit range, and we're looking at other states too. I've started to look at Kentucky and Indiana as well. We like the areas. In terms of locations, I'm looking for stable or growing population. Good job growth, good job diversity. In other words, no one employer employs more than, say 10% of the workforce. I'm looking for, and I mean that, like, for instance, like Vermont, 30%, it was a risk for us because 30% plus of the employee base was hospitality, right? Ski slopes and hiking trails and the folks that work there. And so, fortunately, during the times that we owned that, the skiing business was really good. But I could also see that at some point it would turn, and I didn't want to be a property when it did turn.
Sure.
But so I'm looking, I'm looking for uh, either construction upgrades or management upgrades. And so we have, like, here in Connecticut, when we were sort of hunting for small properties, there were about 1,200. Actually, there were 1,208 properties that we were targeting. Now that we're looking for much larger buildings, there's probably, I think the last count was about 390 properties that we were looking at in the Carolinas, and we're looking to build either relationships with brokers, ideally, and property managers, and/or the building owners themselves, so that when it comes time for them to sell, we want to be their first call.
It's interesting. So it sounds like you're using the MLS or something to get a list of all the properties that fit your general box, and then that shrinks down very, very well. You know what I mean? So it's not just some gigantic intimidating. You're looking at all these different locations and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's part of my technology and specifically my marketing experience, is that not trying to, what they call in the tech world, don't boil the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's simply a very clear box that these properties fit in, and we want to build relationships with as many of those owners and/or brokers who own the relationships within that box as humanly possible, so that we're one of, if not their first call.
Sure. No, that's important. And for the development side, with affordable housing, are you getting money from the state, from the federal government? Is it a deal like that, or?
So there is some of that. It's more tax help than actual grants. There are grants, but they take forever and a day to get. And so, in one case, we have applied for brownfield grants from the state, but it takes 12 to 18 months to see that money, so we have to front the cash anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we're raising money instead, and so that's on the development side, it's mostly equity, and then we're obviously putting debt on it as well, construction debt.
Okay, and let's get to that in 1 second. There's another question. I got it. It just left my brain. There was another question I had, but then you said that, I thought, let's talk about that. So tell me. Well, you know what? Here it came back to me. It sounds like you're taking a long-term approach to this. I mean, you want to be holding these buildings in the long term. So that kind of leads into the next question. How are you structuring the deals with the investors and all? I love the long-term approach. I think that's very, very important. But we were talking too, it sounds like you have a debt offering, which is probably more on the shorter term. So talk to me about the different offerings you have for investors, and just let's have that conversation.
Yeah. So it starts at the kind of the most basic. We have a debt fund, and so we've released that, and so basically the investors can invest in the debt fund, and we do two things with that. One, a small portion of that fund, we are acquiring properties, using that to acquire properties, and then obviously there's a return, of depending on the level of your investment, anywhere from 8 to 10%. And then the rest of that money we're actually loaning out to other small investors and turning that. So those terms tend to be 6 to 12 months, depending on the project. So that's a much faster turn. The buy and hold properties that we're acquiring tend to be either joint ventures or syndicates. I have done both, and with joint ventures, it simply comes down to percentage of the deal that you're putting in. So if we have to raise $1 million, and Clark Street and our partner, me and my partner, are putting in, say, $300,000, we own 30% of the deal, right?
Okay.
And then the other folks come in, and fund the other 700,000 or 70%. And then, we're responsible for putting debt on the deal as well. So, typically I'm looking to finance 50 to 65% max. And then the rest of it is typically equity. And, we manage the property and we handle all that. But, and our management obviously is verticalized. So it's us managing it so that they get the investors get a little bit of comfort in the fact that not only are we the ones that own the property, but we're also the ones that operate and manage it as well. Talk about our standards and our processes, and educate the investors in that way. And then on the syndication side, those tend to be, typically a 30-70 split. We're also putting money in. But, in terms of organizing the properties, and, the investors tend to get 70%, most of the deals we do. And then, the whole goal there is a 3 to 7 year hold, depending on the project. Development projects tend to be a little longer, sometimes as much as 10 years. But the whole idea here is to over the course of time, the first 24 months is all about either building or stabilizing. And then the remainder is really starting to create operational efficiency and build cash flow and ultimately build value. Right.
Yeah. So, and at some point there would be a refi and the investors could be taken out, or
either we'll refi or sell. Yeah. There's some sort of liquidity event. Exactly.
okay. What would make you do a joint venture over a syndication? Is there
typically value, right? So anything under $1 million, we'll do a joint venture. Anything over $1 million, we'll do a syndicate.
okay? And how do you handle operational cash? If you're going in and you're doing a lot of renovation and things like that, how is that being built into your model and then your fundraising?
So we used to get commercial fix and flip loans.
Okay.
Where we would be bringing, 20% cash to the table. We'd finance 80% of it with the commercial lender, kind of bridge loan type stuff. And then they fund anywhere from 80 to 100% of the rehab. I've kind of gotten away from those, mainly because I'm not a huge fan of bridge debt. I don't like the fact that, 12 to 24 months from now, I have to pay, a couple $1 million back, and the world can change twice in that time frame. And I don't know how that's going to happen. Right. Mm-hmm. So now what we've been doing is we use debt to acquire the building in that, 50 to 65% loan to value. And then the rest of it we're doing with equity. And that seems to smooth out cash flow a little bit. It certainly removes risk from the project in terms of, debt rate fluctuations and all that. It allows us to more conservatively manage the cash in terms of doing the rehab. We'll stick that money in treasury. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of time, as we need the money, we'll disperse the CapEx budget. And as part of that, there's also contingencies and reserves as part of that equity raise. So, we want to make sure. One of the things that I've done in the past, which I will never do again, is undercapitalize some of these projects where I'm like, oh, I've got to dip into my pocket and come up with, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 grand to bridge the gap. And I don't like doing that. That's really stressful.
One of the reasons I ask is I have a good friend who bought a small apartment complex. I think it was maybe 12 units or something like that. And they pay, it was him and a few partners. They paid cash for it. And they just didn't factor in operational cash, and it was an old building and needed a lot of work. And, as time went on and, they owned it, a couple weeks, couple months, things were starting to come up and tenants move out, you got to upgrade. And it was just asking them, how did you not think about the operational cash side of this? It's of course you need money to run the business.
It's yes. And I've done the same thing, granted I did it 10, 12 years ago, but that was a hard lesson to learn, right? You got to come home and to your wife why I'm pulling $25,000 out of our savings account because I failed to, create a reserve around, hey, if the main sewer pipe breaks, what are we going to do with that? Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And that is not a pleasant conversation with your life partner.
I can't imagine.
They tend to be pretty pissed. So don't do that. Just raise the money.
You live and you learn. How are you building relationships with investors, which will kind of lead to our last question here?
Yeah. So it's a process, right? I mean, I look at it like dating. And
it's a courtship, right?
What's that? Yeah, it is, right? I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me. We're trying to figure out, are we on the same page from a operational perspective, from a timeline perspective, from a values perspective, right?
Mm.
I'm not looking to cut corners. I'm not looking to pinch pennies. I'm responsible with money, but I'm not going to not fix something because it's going to cost, X dollars, right? So I need to make sure that everybody understands what the business plan is and that they buy in. Some do, some don't, and that's okay. And the ones where we don't fit, I'm happy to introduce them to other folks that might be a better fit for the way that they want to operate, and that's okay. It comes down to control in some respects, right? And trust.
Yeah.
Can we build a relationship based on similar values where you understand that you are not in control? I'm the one that's going to do this, but based on my track record, I've delivered every time, and I do what I say I'm going to do, and you get the money that I say you're going to get, on the timeline I say you're going to get it, very consistently. And so, that is really important to me, because when a partnership breaks down, it's because, it's usually because of a couple of different things: misaligned values, misaligned expectations, right? And so, as we date, and I'm not talking about after you've invested, I'm talking about while we're getting to know each other, right? If we can be on the same page as far as values in terms of how we operate, and expectations in terms of what you need out of the relationship and what I'm prepared to deliver, me and my team, then it's a good fit. And if those things aren't aligned, it's not a good fit, and that's okay.
Sure. Sometimes you have to know when the relationship's not going to work and when it is, right?
Yeah, because when I hand you a contract and we both sign it, you hand over a chunk of money, we're married.
Sure.
Right? So we got to make it work. And every building, every property, whether new development or an existing building, every single project has a curveball, every single one. And so how you deal with adversity and how I deal with adversity needs to be fairly consistent, so that, we're on the same page, and you're not blowing up my phone, second guessing what we're doing. And I'm not, stressed out because I can't deliver on what I said I would do. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't like there to be any surprises, I want to make sure people really understand what they're investing in, what the strategy is, why you're doing it, the thesis, all that kind of stuff. So, Ed, how can investors, find out more about you and get in touch with you?
So best way is to reach us on our website, clarkstreet.com, clarkst.com. I'm Ed at clarkst.com, and feel free to reach out to me. And that's probably the best way. I'm on social media where we do a lot of work with new investors on our YouTube channel. And, we do a lot of work with folks in the, C-level executives who are looking to invest in real estate. We do a lot of interaction and engagement on LinkedIn there, and, Facebook and Instagram. We do that for fun, just to, help people out and let people know we're out here. So, there's a lot of ways to get a hold of me, but I'm Ed Mathews with 1T. On Ed Mathews 4 with 1T on pretty much every social media platform.
Okay. Well, good to know. They will certainly be reaching out, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. It was a great conversation. So many different topics and things we could talk about. So I appreciate you being here with me.
Yeah, man. Happy to do it. Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you all well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed.